Hello, everyone. Today it's Pluto and the polarity points through the houses, and it's an honor to be back again, Linda. Thank you very much for organizing this. I'm amazed how well it's been developing and how, it's such a great thing to have all these resources available and so many good astrologers um, that you all gathered and that now give all their information out just because they love astrology. And it is, I did the Pluto polarity theory the first time. It's been a few months actually, and I won't talk about that so much because it's there, it's online, and people can rewatch it if they like. But I'm going to go through the houses. And I think, I just got off the phone or the Skype thing with Eugenia Kroc and Danielle Polgar for a podcast thing we did on Soulflow. And of course, there was a lot of talk on this particular eclipse, which I think is it's a very nice time to do actually Pluto polarity points for an eclipse, because this eclipse has Pluto opposing Ceres. Exactly. It's this super intense Pluto energy that is getting mixed up with this incredibly strong Leo energies, right? Which is like, that's life. Leo is life, Pluto is death. These two belong in the same spectrum. And it's a little bit the same with polarity points of Pluto. I was meditating on it while I was doing some housework, a very rare thing today. And I took the opportunity to actually think a little bit. And I was thinking about, so what is this Pluto polarity point thing after all? What is it why? Why do we have these polarity points? What is it that we're learning? Why do we have to have that kind of experience in our own lives? And it is because things die. We die, our patterns die. We just get exhausted by being ourselves. There is no more life force. It doesn't support life anymore. And therefore, it feels like death. It feels like, ugh, this is so old. It's like old energy. And that's why we need to go to the polarity point to find the medicine for the old energy. We find the medicine, the remedy for the old, dead energy that is the stagnant Pluto energy. Nothing is worse than being stuck in a stagnant Pluto energy. Nothing works, there's no power, there's no life, there's only this sense of being stuck in a swamp. 1 feet, you can't get it out, right? So it's like, that's the kind of energy that we are trying to heal when we are working on the Pluto polarity point. It's actually trying to become free of whatever it is that is restricting us, limiting us. That's why sometimes Scorpio is so, uh, obsessed with confrontation and working on themselves, because then they work beyond their limitations. So wherever we have Pluto in our charts is also a place where we feel our limitations, where we feel hunger for more. I need to have another life experience because I'm just repeating something that is making me weaker. Right? So with Pluto, we need to get out of our patterns, we need to get out of our addictions, we need to heal the traumas, we need to expand, we need to move beyond these limitations that the psychology is putting on us, the emotion. Scorpio is the emotional body. And in esoteric astrology, we say the Pluto is the one that kills everything, that stands in the way for the soul. And it's not a mistake that the sign after Scorpio is Sagittarius, which is pure expansion. It's really freedom. Huh? So after this sense of limitation, after this feeling of being sort of crushed by life or being held back by something on the inner levels, or having had many experiences of trauma and loss and death, and the whole thing that the life menu can offer us, we go through this healing, this transformation, this mutation of energy, and then we emerge in a more Sagittarius vibe where we have opportunity again. And being stuck in Pluto is not a good thing because most of the energy is subconscious. So we need to get this mirror effect of the polarity points. We need to experience ourselves differently. And that's very frightening for most people. This is why I think it's a good thing to do a polarity point workshop when you have the eclipses, because it's really pushing you out of the comfort zone. These eclipses are really, this eclipse is very intense. I know, because it involves Leo, and Leo is the sun, and it is the heart of existence. It's the purpose of being here. It's the light of life itself. It's the love. And it really, you know, if this, that's why it's so strong, and people have been feeling it already, you know, because you have this, you know, it's not even a hype. It's not like Mercury retrograde, you know, like a hype thing, which we can debate whether or not that is a hype, but it's certainly, you know, we hype it a little bit, right? But this eclipse is definitely one of a kind. And I think it is good that you put an intention down for this new moon. And you know, if you go through stuff that is difficult for you for the time being, you know, try to see whatever happens in your life as something that will, you know, it's not going to be like this forever, you know. Everything changes all the time. That's what people don't like, and that's why we hold on so much. And that's even more why we need Pluto. I remember, of course, being you know, so into the soul and the nodal axis and stuff. When I first started studying seriously astrology, the first book I took out was Pluto 1-2 by Jeff Green. And the thing is that, so I was really early introduced to these things. And I remember one of the things that he mentions in this book, and it really stuck with me, which is at the core of our human limitation, because change is difficult. He said, change can be either cataclysmic, like it happens like an earthquake thing, like whatever you are holding on to, it's going to be taken away from you because you're holding on so tightly, like a broken marriage, or, you know, we have all these ideas why we have to be there, etc., etc., and then the guy you want to leave and ends up cheating on you, which is like, oh, the irony. Like, but still, it's a subconscious need for change that created the whole situation. You on one level, you divorced this person many years ago, and that just was, you know, you waited so long, so a trauma happened or something really dramatic happened, because that's a cataclysm, right? And then you have another principle in change, and it's erosion. When Earth is slightly moving to adapt to new conditions, it's like, oh, the tree used to be over here, but now it's over there. Erosion, right? So everything is moving all the time. And that's the more constant change. Then you have an individual who's open for change, who's ready for change, and who is embracing the need for change, you know. And then you have like a little bit of both. Like, you have some parts of ourselves can be very easy to be open for change, but if we have deeper issues with life, then other parts of ourselves can, you know, need cataclysm, right? So you get a mixture of the two. So that's always interesting, because it's not necessarily a joyful ride to the polarity point. I mean, people normally tend to stay in security zones because it's known, it's repeated, and it's whatever is repeated enough times, it makes a habit, and a habit, it creates security in a life that is always changing. So I'll share my screen now and go through the different houses so that we get through everyone. It's so boring. I remember I was teaching something with Pisces. And there was a Pisces in the room, and she says, remember Pisces, you make sure that Pisces is included, because the astrologers always forget Pisces because they don't have enough time to cover Pisces. And it made me laugh, of course, but it's true. It is not so nice. Ska vi se. Där. It's not so nice to forget Pisces. All right, now I go all dark. We go into Pluto now, huh? So Pluto in the first house, you know, or in Aries. I should have added that, but since few people are born with Pluto in Aries for the time being, I guess it suffices to say Pluto in the first house. It could also be Pluto Mars, right? But Pluto in the first house is you know, everything that is related to cardinal cross is very, very intense and strong. And, you know, you have this feeling that there's a special destiny to fulfill. Like, I'm here to do something. I'm a change maker. I have to create some changes. So it's a house of action, willpower, choice, individuality. And I think, the first house, it's about identity, knowing, being authentic. And if there's anything in your environment that is challenging this authenticity, you can have this compulsion towards anger. You can have a very low tolerance for abuse and restrictions. There can be a need to have a lot of independence. What is often a challenge for a lot of these Pluto in the first house individuals is that they create these huge changes in their lives where everything is turned upside down because they just can't deal with the abuse anymore, or the restrictions, or the lack of freedom. Aries energy is not an energy you can control. You cannot tell Aries what to do. That's impossible. I'm going to do what my impulses tell me to do. So there's this real need to have, there's a real need to have some sort of contact with the impulsive, with the core of one's being when Pluto is in the first house. And it can be a little like pushing people a little bit away, because if there's cooperation, there could be a possibility that the very core of individuality might be challenged in a way, right? So if I cooperate with people, I no longer exist. Huh? So there could be, when we read Jeffrey, he says also, it's security, it's the security pattern. So there can also be this deep sense of loneliness with Pluto in the first house, like I can only count on myself. I'm the only reliable person around. Everybody else are disappearing all the time. I will just turn on some lights here because the sun went down. All right, so what is difficult sometimes with exactly this defense mechanism that is sometimes on superdrive is that this person ends up being alone in their lives. They end up doing everything alone, and they end up alienating people from them because there is such a low tolerance for injustice, for instance, or there's such a low tolerance for for manipulation in a way. So you can have people clashing with all kinds of authority figures. You can have people getting into conflict very easily. It depends, of course, on the rest of the chart. If this is the chart of an Aquarian or a Gemini or something very mental, it will manifest differently. But let's say it's the chart of a Cancer or a Leo or somebody who's more instinctual in their nature, it can be very, very abrupt and difficult. So it's all these burnt bridges. And I think, most of the time when I have clients in the first house is that later stages of their lives, they can be super afraid of going into relationships because they've gone through these cataclysmic changes, like I can't hold on to a relationship. And there's also this fear that will everything be turned upside down again? I mean, it's very difficult to have your life turned upside down. Like you lose everything, like change of house, have to get a new job. It's like the change of identity all the time. And you can just imagine how that is if you have, a relationship. It's that dilemma between Aries and Libra. It's the need for being in a relationship, but also the need to explore who you are. So it's a pioneering energy, right? It has its ups and downs, but eventually there will be an exhaustion of this freedom. And eventually the need to explore your identity will come to a, it would become stagnant. It's like you have to try to figure out how to cooperate with people now. You have to try to figure out how your defense mechanism works. It's not necessarily, cooperation is not the same as being dominated. And cooperation is not the same as being taken over. Yeah, you're still going to have some freedom. You can do whatever you want. If you want to go to the right, or to the left, I'm not going to question you. You can just go there if you want to. So it is opening up to other people and their opinions. And whenever people tell you something about yourself or another, it's like you start to think whether or not they're right in their observation. Many people have heard people mirror them, and it's like, but I'm not like that. Hmm? Sometimes you are like that. You know, the seventh house is all about listening and daring to listen. None of us are perfect, right? But if there's been a lot of anger and aggression in your experience, having this kind of listening, being in a listening mode is not the easiest. The defense mechanisms are so quick, you know? So it is, you know, sometimes necessary for Pluto, you know, in the first house to have a shocking experience with other people, to just to open up a whole new perspective, like completely new way of seeing it. I'll see it from my side of the table, then see it from my end. And this can be a very healing experience for the first house Pluto, because then they see, okay, I don't necessarily have to go through this attraction repulsion patterns, right, where I become extremely attracted to someone, and then after a while, you know, I don't like them anymore. It's like, because it's strangling me, or it's defining me in a way, you know, that is not good for me. It's just, you know, I don't like that person anymore. So it can be very difficult to form relationships in the beginning with this kind of aspect in your chart, because the first house is deeply instinctual. So there can be huge sexual attraction to someone, and at the same time you might not like their persona, so you push them away afterwards, and then you get a lot of short relationships, right? And that doesn't teach you how to trust and be in a relationship based on an equal, you know, stance. The art of cooperation. And it's also, you know, the major thing that what happens in a cooperative relationship is that a lot of these misunderstandings that I thought you said what to me, you know, like we jump to conclusions, and a lot of these misunderstandings, when we start to communicate them, it opens up an understanding where other people are coming from. And then the circle is whole. Then the Pluto in the first house can also explore and experience relationships, which is very good for that person, right? It might be a deep longing to belong to someone, especially because the path of the soul has been one of solitude for so long. And it's a little bit the same with Pluto in the second house, right? Because again, we're into the first quadrant. The first quadrant is all about survival. I should have a timer, and if I don't make every house, I think we need to set up another one. I hope, because if, you know, if I run out of time, then maybe we just have to fulfill it another time. But the second house is a house of autonomy. It's our resources, it's self-reliance, self-sufficiency, survival. And we have a symbol for the second house. It's the farmer. The first house is the seed. The second house is the farmer, giving loving care to the seed. It's always, you have to water the seed. You have to be there to watch it grow. You have to nurture the soil. You have to root the seed. And in the seed in Aries, it's very easy to pluck up, but the seed in Taurus, it's now growing into earth, to mama, and it's gaining roots. It's getting roots, but it's not there yet. So it's still defensive, right? When you challenge someone's individuality and they are not completely sure how they are, you will have this, what did you mean about that? I'm not like this, right? So it's also this limited vision that happens in Taurus. Like Jeffrey calls it the frog in the well syndrome. So it's like, if you're a frog in a well, you look up and you can just see a limited space. You know, I see so much of the sky. That's my reality, right? But it's this withdrawal that Taurus is doing is necessary for survival. For if you have too many people disturbing your energy, you won't have sufficient energy to make the seed grow these deep roots, and the whole process of finding your true essence, or finding your resources, and starting to understand your worth, will be complicated because other people always have opinions. If you tell somebody that I have a dream, I want to sail across the earth and blah, 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 and there's always going to be somebody who says, are you stupid? You can't do that, and try to pull it down. So I think Taurus realized that don't blab about your ideas before you really settled into them yourself. Right? Keep to yourself a little bit. But again, the backdrop of that is limited vision, right? Taurus is also related to sensuality, sexuality, the body, fertility. There can be fertility issues with Pluto in the second house. There's also this dullness with the heavy Earth inertia, where there's, I'm not bothering to do anything with my resources. So there could be, like you have talents, but you're not using them. It could be this stagnation. So a lot of people who are heavily influenced with Taurus, and I'm one of them, so by all means, I'm talking to myself here, it can be really territorial. This is my territory, nobody's defensive, in the sense that don't take my territory, this is my space, right? So which is, so there's a survival thing in that, but of course nobody can do everything themselves. So again, there is this super deep loneliness complex in Taurus as well. It's really longing for the 8th house. It's longing to opening up to others emotionally. It's longing for the intimacy. It's longing for the sharing and the change. And due to often a very comfortable life, maybe relying on other people's money or having a house or, having some property, it's comfortable. So why the change? This is always what Taurus asks. Is it worth it? Is it worth all this work? This change thing, right? So Taurus can be very stagnant. And sometimes it doesn't have to be like this, but sometimes with Pluto in the second house, there can also be this very, very low self-esteem issue, like a poverty complex. I'm this super talented artist, but I refuse to take money for my stuff. Like I'm underpaid. And this could be a big, huge pain. I often work with that with clients who have Pluto in the second house. And, and in one way or another, the individual is then forced to look at themselves. Really, really, aren't you worth more? Look at what you make, huh? Isn't it good? I don't think it's good. Let's say we have Pluto in Virgo in the second house. I'm super self-critical. I don't think it's that good. So it's opening up for the change. And that's why I think sometimes when you have this Pluto in the second house, just what is it the 8th house is? It's going in deep, right? It's opening up a deeper well of psychological insights. It is opening up the doors to the inner levels. And it's, again, something that happens when we allow ourselves to open up to another person, intimacy. And there can be sexual intimacy with this. Like when you have sexual intimacy with people, you get a love that you can only get through this particular communication. And, to be desired, right? To be wanted. That's a Scorpio energy. And seeing the Taurus energy, when it sees that we are actually in some sort of communication with each other that is leading to growth, then it's worth it. But then again, again, you can close off and you have this shut off syndrome, and that often happens in Taurus, that is just closing off because it's really, again, distrust, fearing change. Change is difficult, huh? I have to sell my house and leave my work? No, I'm not going to do that. It's comfortable here, right? I have my little sofa, I do my little thing, and then they are doing the same thing over and over again for 40 years. And then eventually it's just completely stagnant. So Scorpio energy opens up this stagnation field by confrontation. So you can have very, very deep and emotional and difficult confrontations with other people with this placement. This is part of your polarity point process or experience. There can also be rejections, which is also part of creating consciousness about it. I'm not I'm not valuing myself enough, so therefore I go through these constant rejections. My art is not appreciated, or I'm not getting paid, or like, and that's so intense for people, but it's still part of the same experience of, well, then value yourself more, then be more courageous, don't be so dependent, right? So it's really like one of the really strong placements of Pluto in by houses. Of course, the eighth house too. It's exceptional in the evolutionary paradigm because of its natural correlation to Pluto's nature itself. So this is a super strong one. All right, 3. Now, I met quite a few people who had Pluto in the third house, and they're always constantly looking at life as if they were tourists. Like, what's this? Oh my God, that's interesting. Like, they're there, but they're not. It's like to logically order their existence, the eternal tourist. And it is about the mind, of course, but it's also about um, um, gaining so much information that you are certain that you won't be fooled, duped, waste any time. Like if you just have enough knowledge, you will be able to um, be safe. Now, where does this need to be safe through knowledge come from? Well, probably some past life experiences where you've the Gemini energy can be really, really impulsive. It's like, because A happened, then B just happened, and now I'm in a big mess. Why did I say yes to this? I just said yes, and I don't know why. So it's being unconscious about communication that could have been the need, and fuel the need to, I'm going to make it right this time. I'm not going to make any mistakes. I'm going to have my mind, I'm awake now, right? I have to figure out all these languages and cultures and how people act in different areas in astrology, and I need to know everything. And I like, you know, uh, Pluto doesn't want to re-experience some trauma again, right? hmm And there's also this trauma related to speaking one's truth, right? Which can make Pluto in the third house people really good at either shutting up, never saying anything out of fear of saying the wrong thing, or saying the right things all the time, like being very street smart. So it's all about, Gemini, third house, it's about fitting in, it's about integration into societies, into the social norms and contexts of society. And if you really know how thing works, it's easier for you. If you know how people in New York think, it will be easier for you as a foreigner to go to New York, of course. But Gemini energy is super reactive, so you can get into a lot of trouble just because A happened, then B has to happen. So it is, you know, it's well described in Patricia Walsh's book, on the notes, and I recommend this book by totally. It's an excellent book if you want to learn about the past life dynamics of Pluto in the third house, or the south node in the third house, right? But it's all about surviving in a maze. And what happens is, when you get all this relative knowledge, is that you can have people who are confused completely about their life path and unable to figure out what to do with all this knowledge. And it's like a tree without a trunk. So it's all this, it's I'm just wasting my energy. I'm just expressing my energy in every direction, and I cannot find like a centering quality. I do not know where I belong everywhere seemingly. And I know I'm a jack of all trades, so there can be a huge problem finding your life path with this one. And it is, you know it's Gemini finds intuition difficult because it starts to debate it all the time. It's like, but what if, right? So going to the ninth house, you will have experiences where this relative knowledge is not giving you anything. I'm like, now I read all the books and I'm still not feeling anything. It's like, yeah, I don't feel wiser. I just feel more stupid in a way, because my head is full of all this unnecessary knowledge. So there's a need to retreat. And sometimes there can be experiences with Pluto in the third house where the immediate environment is sort of kicking you out. Like, not that you're not wanted, but it's just, the soul creates this retreat situation. Like now I have to, the ninth house is like, I'm retreating back to find my wisdom. I'm not bothering to hear other people's theories on this one. I want to see for myself what this is about. So there can be a huge need for Pluto in the third house to actually seek out some spiritual knowledge and to understand what it means to have an intuition, so that there can be some deeper meaning to life. Like nothing, it's not just superficial. And there's also this need to pick out and go for what seems, we never know, most true according to your truth. So it's, the entanglement, sometimes it's easy to just be super entangled in all and everybody else's opinion about how things are. What do you think? Yeah. So you don't have to do that confrontation. What is your truth then? Where do you belong? What do you want in your life? What's your mission? So it demands some honesty and truthfulness. And sometimes Pluto in the third house can get caught in trouble because of lies, or like a double life, or like, I don't believe Gemini to be liars, but there's this, how can you say, it's almost like they chicken out sometimes at telling the truth. It's just too much, like if I say this, I'll be in, I'm not safe anymore. And then you can have an untruthful life, like lifelines, lies, like my life is based on a set of lies. I don't like my job, so why don't you quit? I can't do that. I know nothing. I feel stupid. And that's also a part of, Gemini. That's the darkness of Gemini. The shadow side of Gemini is that feeling of stupidity. Evidently, I make bad choices because I react too much. I'm just in survival mode. And, I'm not necessarily calling, what is a lie? If you're if you're really like a manipulator and you like, I sit home and I speculate what kind of lies I'm going to make up next, like a compulsive liar. But no, the lies of Gemini is more not saying anything or talking after the mouth of others. It's excluding certain bits of knowledge, white lies. Huh? And that's why they have this double life thing. But to be honest and truthful and seeing people directly in the face and say, really, man, I really don't like you, but it's okay. It's okay. It's just, that's the Sagittarius thing to do, right? So it's really, sometimes when you have Pluto in the third house, they have to go through this experience where this security of being understood by everyone, or at least not misunderstood, is taking precedence over truth. And it is, it is difficult to know what your truth is, because since there's so much curiosity in this placement, newer findings undermines earlier knowledge. So it is quite a challenge. Well, every Pluto placement is challenging, but the Gemini energy, it's it needs focus and concentration and dedication to be able to be, to be something practical in life. You cannot study 300 different subjects. You have to choose one. And I think, can also be issues with traumas with speaking your own truth, right? Like sometimes that could be part of why you don't go for it, right? So it's like, what would people think if I became an astrologer? They will make a fool out of me. So it has to do with social humiliations and social anxieties can be, occurring with Pluto in the third. So it's really like a very sensitive placement, because it involves the environment, and we are social animals, right? In trouble finding good communicating partners, having a deep need to communicate something in your relationships, and having relationships that actually opens up for a great deal of honesty and truth. And then you have to have people who are willing to listen to you. And I think a lot of the Gemini wound is that people Gemini thinks sometimes that people don't find them interesting, or that nobody's interested in listening to this, or I'm stupid, so, you know. Yes. Oh, these are some charts. Thank you. And then in the fourth house, we're back on the cardinal cross again, right? So we're again talking about identity. We're again finding our inner identity, our ego core. And it is a new cycle. It is definitely, the soul is now coming to a place in its development where it needs to initiate something new, right? It needs, perhaps you sometimes see it with transgenderism, where you have people shifting sex during this life because there's this need to end something and begin something new. And yeah, well, Pluto in Cancer, it was the silent generation of the war, right? They are called the silent generation. And my grandmother was born with this placement, and I remember how she approached her coffee. She was like, it has to be real cream. And she was like, it has to be real butter. And I'm like, oh, with this obsession with this butter and the cream. And I realized, her memory, her soul memory from the war was still lingering so deeply inside of her. It was reverberating through her mind. And that was her need. Like, all we need is just this simple survival thing, like security thing. So there can be a huge need for security in this placement. Like Pluto, people born with Pluto in the fourth house normally have some sort of emotional trauma that they're working on in this lifetime. They need a mother, who's available for them the first 3 years. And alas, in our society today, people don't have the luxury of being home with their kids for 3 years. Both my children are born with Pluto in the fourth house. And I remember this so strongly. Like, I was so happy I had that knowledge when I got them. And they're 3 years apart. And I remember my son had a very traumatic birth experience. I was fine, but I saw he had to lie on top of my breast for 3 months. For 3 months, he was lying on me. I couldn't sleep. I was like completely crooked and stuff because this kid was taking over my space. And after that too, not just like we slept in the same bed. He had to be nurtured a lot. My daughter's the same, they came to me to get this healing. That's my theory, like, but of course, this a little bit influenced by the astrological knowledge that I found around this placement of Pluto in the fourth house, right? But I see as well, how I have to push them a little bit to get to their own 10th house, to get out of that comfort zone, right? You have to know when to stop as well. And there can be this security craving due to this insecurity deep in the persona, like, and then, as I both have my moon and my Saturn conjunct in my chart. So, I can be, I nurture, and then I say, hey, now I'm Capricorn. Now it's tough love again, right? So we go from soft love to tough love with the fourth and the 10th house. And the soft love is like always accepting, just holding space, being there for you, holding on. That's what the Pluto in the fourth house would love for the rest of their lives, right? But that's not possible. Everybody has to grow up at one point, right? So there can be a lot of emotional displacement, and there can be a lot of sensitivity. And there's also this imprinting in the womb, which is very difficult to deal with when you're growing up. But it's it's the emotional needs that you come in with emotional needs that weren't met by one of your parents, or that weren't met at all, like this trauma of the war. And that translated into my grandmother wanting cream in her coffee all the time. And or it could be that in this lifetime you also get like these emotional needs that you don't feel like one of the parents are actually capable of meeting you, or you have some sort of experience in life where you have a mother who is always out um, working, and she cannot be home with the child, and that's can lead to this emotional insecurity issues. So the 10th house, at one point there will be somebody kicking you out of the house or pulling you out of your comfort zone or starting to make demands. I mean, great, you need healing. Well, the time is ticking, man. You have to do something with your life too. You can't always get it your way. So there can be like a huge manipulation going on with the Pluto in the fourth house. Like, I want my needs met, so I'm going to do anything to get it. If I just make a lot of noise, I'm going to get my needs, you know. But that's also minimizing responsibility for yourself, and it is putting it on others. So there's this huge parental child energy in this dichotomy, and eventually there will be people who says, I'm cutting off the lifeline here. You have to just make it on your own, and growing up and taking responsibility. Or you will feel yourself too, like, oh God, I wish I was just free from these addictions and I can move into becoming the one that I'm supposed to be, and grow up and take up some space in society where I can create something and be someone. The fourth house in Cancer is it's not super ambitious. It's like, I'm fine here. Well, all I need is a good meal and a great bed and some love and nurturance. And these are the basic needs of the fourth house. It's being home, being family. And the great wound of the fourth house Pluto in the fourth house can sometimes be loss of family, not have family, not have any connections, right? And then there is this need for, maybe I created this situation because I needed to grow up and I needed to take responsibility and I needed to become self-determined. And that's not a conscious creation. That's what we call faith, or fate, what we call it. And fate came and took away your parents, right? Or I was adopted. Something, yeah. So you can have adoption with this placement too, and then you have like this involuntary change. I have to grow up. I don't want to, but I have to take care of myself. And there can be a resistance towards going towards your 10th house. The 5th house, which is, it's the energy of the inner child. It's the creative inner child. And then I've had quite a few, there's often this 5th house people, they love astrology, evidently, because it really puts, it's what they thrive in, is when they can work on their own sense of self and their own creative expression and the expressing of the self. And it's the creative house. The 2nd house, the 5th house, the 8th house, the 11th house is all part of the fixed axis, and it's really super creative. It's all about life. And the 5th house is definitely about life. So here you have a very specific life, death, darkness, light kind of placement of Pluto, because there can be some abrupt change, some abrupt influences growing up related to your sense of self that killed your self-confidence and made it impossible for you to conquer the world the way you dream of. You want to be someone. The 5th, we're all someone, but the 5th house needs to be, it's creative self-actualization. It's coming into the world. It's radiating. It's really radiating. It's like, here I am. Can you see me? Huh? So there can be some distortions around attentions or negative attention. Very often, a lot of things that, the things that I fought, especially in my life, is like, why do you always have to focus on negative, right? Can't you see something good in me? Like, to my parents, when they're criticizing my Mercury in Pisces, it gets a lot of beating, actually. It's so messy. I need a secretary. And, that's my joke. I'm better now. But the thing is that, I got a lot of, they weren't very merciful with me when I grew up with that one. And it's like, that's the experience of negative attention, is like, you always lose your shit, and I, you should pierce the keys to her body. That was my brother's suggestion, because I always lost my keys. And even though it wasn't a lot, they weren't teasing me for this, but I remember it so well. It was the negative attention. It was like dark spots on my persona. I'm supposed to feel shameful. It's still my nemesis. It's still my nemesis. And it's the negative attention. And that's a classic for 5th house Pluto. I think Patricia uses a marvelous example in her book about a kid who draws a tree, which she thinks is a tree, but the teacher sees that's not a tree, because she made a fantasy tree. And that's so creative. And why are you just, it's not being seen? Hmm? So to be seen is not to be projected on, right? So there's this huge situation around being seen or not being seen, and lack of dignity and self-respect, right? Because of this humiliation of negative attention. There can also be there's also this dark side of the fifth house, which is very controlling and dictatorial almost. So there can be experiences with having these dictators in your house, or being one yourself. I need to have my will done every time. There is this certain kind of childishness that is a residue in the shadow side of the fifth house. And it can be because your childhood in one particular life was abrupted. Like, I never got to grow up in my last life, so I'm still extremely immature. Like, I went my way, and there's this sense of drama as well, and not getting enough attention or not getting the right kind of attention. So the trauma of not being supported or not having this special support, so there's a need in the 11th house to go to your mind and see things more objectively. Don't be so caught up in your own drama. Hey, so you're going to meet these criticizers all the time, arresting your drama, right? So there's a need to learn and develop the quality of objectivity and listen to the needs of any group. That's the nodal axis for the time being, huh? We're all going to go through a little bit of this. And it's overcoming this me first royalty complex. Like, I'm entitled, right? Entitlement is a huger problem than I think we realize, right? I think you don't have to have Pluto in the fifth house to be entitled. Why is the food so late in this restaurant? People get paid, right? This kind of indignation. I see a lot of it. I live in a city that's highly influenced by a lot of tourists. This is one of the most touristy cities in all of Norway. And the last couple of years, people go crazy. They all want to see the fjords and shit. And the sense of entitlement that, people get when they're touristy, it's just amazing to watch. It's like, why don't you pick up your garbage? Huh? Why don't you treat people nicer? I'm not saying all are like that, but that's sometimes the part of the problem, when we feel like, but I'm entitled. I spend money here, so I'm entitled. But that's when you are not recognizing the needs of your children or your workers or your partners, and then you become um, lost in your own inner self, where there's no, you don't pay enough attention to the group. So, of course, with Uranus and the 11th house, there's always this, oh my God, what did I just do? You wake up very, very, I used to be so, oh, that's not nice, right? Oof, like people, sometimes I see this, if you have Pluto in the Virgo in the fifth house, people are like, I'm really not a nice person. I'm like, yes, maybe you're overcompensating for something. I mean, don't go so high into this. It's time to de-dramatize. We're all something, we all have something. But when you wake up to Uranus, it's like, oh, I can't live with myself. And it doesn't have to be that you're a very awful person. It's just that it seems like that, it's just it gets clear for you what you're doing. If I continue to do this, people won't be my friend anymore, because I'm too demanding, or I'm too I get insulted so easily, or I get disappointed so quickly, or I have too much drama, or whatever. So achieving true self-respect is, of course, loving yourself unconditionally and treating yourself with deep respect. This is also an issue with Pluto in Leo. Parents are Pluto in Leo. My mother is like, I don't feel people respect me. Huh? She's a big life theme there. And that's part of the fifth house thing. People are not respecting me, and it's a big wound around that. And being taken for granted is not something you do with Pluto in the fifth house. You have to see them for what they are and see their good qualities and just, support. But it's difficult because the energy of the ego is so big. So parents often get a little scared when we support something that is very confident. We try to kill it instead. Because the first thing you will notice when you try to express your gifts in the world is most people would try to kill you. I'm not kidding. It's they will try to compete with you or criticize you or overdo you. You try to be better than you or whatever it is. We're not recognizing each other. So learning to see yourself as you are is part of the Aquarian thing. And that's a good thing, and it's a challenging thing because we all have something. And I'm Aquarian, and I remember Maurice when I was doing his classes. He said, Aquarius is the one who's looking at himself, looking at himself, looking at himself in a mirror. It's like you have 3 mirrors, like looking at yourself. And that's the thing with, we had this Trump thing. He's like massive Leo ascendant, Mars on the ascendant. And there was this meme out, and it said, Trump doesn't need a wall, he needs a mirror. Like he needs this quality of seeing himself. He's Pluto in Leo, huh? A big child. It's not always that. It's super creative, right? God, the Pluto in Leo generation made a lot.
Excuse me, Sol. You have 10 minutes left in this meeting, but we've had a postponement of meeting 2, so you're welcome to continue either stopping at the end of Pluto's 6th house or going right to the 12th house. It's up to you.
Oh, we have 2 hours?
Yes, but you don't have to do the full 2 hours. You could.
Sure, no
how
problem.
do you feel?
I feel great. I need a little break and I need to go to the toilet in between, but that's if I just get a 5 minutes break, I can do that. No
okay,
problem.
So you want to continue to do the whole 12 houses?
Yeah, if you want to.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, thank you. Okay.
No problem. All right, so 6th house. We're going to do 6th house then. And the 6th house, well, it's a very fascinating house. I think it's a little misunderstood actually, because I think it relates to Seva, selfless service, the 6th, 12th house. And it's about serving life. And we need to serve life. It is necessary for us to serve life. We need to serve our body. We need to serve nurture our environment. We need to, like today, I washed my windows, and I'm giving service to my house, right? I'm keeping it the way that it should be. It's not getting dirty. It's looking fine. I'm keeping the energy high, right? And that's service. So, but the thing with service is that personal needs can be sacrificed, right? So it's often this self-sacrifice thing that goes on in the 6th house, especially when the South Node gets involved, or you have Pluto there, or and there's also this trauma of being owned, like slave. I'm just a slave. I do not have my own. I have to be at service, or persecuted, or sacrificed. Yeah? So my personal needs are sacrificed, or I'm persecuted for my personal needs, or I'm owned by somebody else. So I don't have the luxury of having personal needs. Yes, I think it's Patricia who calls this a transitional archetype, and it's related to your mutability, like you're going from one, like Jeffrey also mentioned this, that there's still this ego in Pluto in Virgo generation. It's like, I know exactly what I know. Like there's a strong ego in Virgo sometimes, right? Oh, I'm right because I'm always right? Because I know everything and I've had the experience and I'm practical and I'm structured and I'm organized and I'm skillful. So I'm Superman. And this is the ego of Virgo. It's actually what we bleeding over from Leo. It's bleeding over from Leo, and it's like it's the king complex, the queen complex. But in Virgo, there's this humiliation process. The humbling process is starting because we're approaching the 7th house. We're approaching the descendant, right? So we are now preparing to go into a deeper cooperation with people, and then we cannot drag along this big ass ego thing. So the thing is with Virgo is that they know exactly what they know, and then again they are super aware of what they don't know, and that's the self-critical stuff. It's the self-denial stuff, like, yes, I would love to be a superstar, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not good enough. I'm not um, you could be the most skillful piano player in the whole room and still, no, I'm not going to do the concert. No, somebody else can do it, right? It's like this avoidance, like I'm not going to go there. And it's trying, what is it? Virgo is trying to pierce the balloon of self-importance or self-inflation. And always, due to this, that's one of the deepest things that you can work with Pluto in Virgo generation. It's always Puritanism and inadequacy and guilt. There's this huge conditioning. I remember Jeffrey once wrote that the Pluto in Virgo generation are the ones who sat next to Jesus. They're Jesus' best buddies. So there's this emergence of the Christ light. This is esoteric astrology. Like the body is being prepared to receive the higher light. It's one I did in esoteric astrology. We have something called the 3 initiations. When man is going on to the spiritual path, there are some initiation happening. And the first one, the initiation of the body and the nervous system, is Virgo, right? I need to learn structure. I need to learn routine. I need to learn organization of myself so that I can become energy efficient. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to squander time. I want to be there all the time so that I can do my service and my body will work, and, so that life will work again. Because maybe there's been this earlier experiences that you weren't able to fulfill your own destiny, for instance, or you weren't good enough or great enough or skilled enough. And this is a trauma. You don't want to go there. There's one thing that Pluto in Virgo abhors, and it is to be taken with their pants down. Like, they sometimes feel like they lie to the world because they feel shitty on the inside and everybody else thinks they're perfect. So there's quite a great potential for masochism and self, inflicting pain on yourself when Pluto is in Virgo. It's that rejection of the self, and it's mostly because we feel inadequate, or I feel guilty because I took 2 slices of a cake, or so going up to the 12th house, like now we have this big beautiful healing of the 12th house. Like we have Neptune in Pisces and we have Chiron in Pisces, so a lot of this Pluto in Virgo generation are now getting a lot of help to get to their polarity point, right? And it's opening up to the unknown. Yes, we can know so much, we can examine so much, but we can't get it all. We have to open up, and it's surrendering, and it's moving away from rigidity, and it's trusting the unknown again, and making things easier. Simplification, that is a good thing. Like, why do you make things so complicated for yourself? Make it easier. Simplify. It's not that difficult. It's also about forgiveness. If there's been persecutions, there's been trauma, there's been slavery, and there's been abuse, like sexual abuse, there's a need to forgive and open up again to get a relationship to the divine. I know from personal experience, one of the things, I'm a South Node in sixth house person. And right now Saturn is on my North Node. And one of the things that I really experienced is that, the dark side of the 6th house energy is that oh my God, I'm losing everything. That's how it felt. And I'm gaining everything. That's how I feel today. You know, it's been the zeitgeist of the last 6 months. It's like I had to let go of something that was taking up a lot of space in my life, and also, you know, made up a lot of my own security. And I just, you know, opening up to the unknown. And it feels like you losing something all the time, like, and I think that's part of the spiritual process. We're talking a deep spiritual process when we're talking Pluto in the sixth house, because the Pluto in the sixth house person will open up to God eventually, in their own way, of course. They don't have to. They can live all their lives just working and being nitty-gritty about the details, and just going into this, I'm going to organize everything because I came from chaos. And that's fine, you know. But the deeper into the evolutionary levels you get with this placement, the more important it becomes to open up to losing everything, and becoming a more pure channel for something, a deeper energy. And that's holism. It's becoming holistic. It's becoming one with God again. And that's what we do in the 12th house. So we can't get there safely unless we learn the art of forgiving, and unless we learn the art of trusting truth again, and trusting that life will support this creative process. We cannot be delusional. And I think that's a little bit of the fear of the Pluto in the sixth house. It's like, am I deluding myself? You know, yeah, of course, there's always a danger that you're deluding yourself. You can always be mistaken. But if the truth was there, this is not functioning anymore, you have to let go. And there might be a huge void on the other side. We don't know. But still, that's the only option you have available for the time being. It's either that or death. We always get this option with Pluto. It's either that or dying. What do you want? You want to die? Okay, great. You can die. We have free will. We can just go head along, just do it. But if you want to live, you have to go to the polarity point and just open up again. I guess that's almost 10 minutes. I guess I did my little halfway through the circle, right, Linda? I don't have a time.
Yes, yes, we're halfway through now. So
Wonderful.
would you like to have a little break?
Yes, wonderful.
Okay, I'll pause the recording and I'll see you back in, what, 5 minutes?
Yes. Oh, it's 23. Yes, please. 5 minutes is fine.
Okay, lovely. See you soon. Thank you.
Are we going to use the same link, Linda, or use the other one?
No, don't leave the meeting. We're not leaving the meeting.
Oh, we're not leaving. I thought this automatically got off. Well, okay. I just need to run to the toilet, etc. And so 5 minutes. Beautiful.
5 minutes, yes. I'm just going to pause the recording. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. So we got to the 7th house. And can I just ask you, Linda, how long are we due till next meeting? Is it?
We've got about an hour and 15 minutes, so
Okay.
you can go for as long as you like.
All right. Let's see how you know, I normally get into this inspiration thing. I can talk and talk and talk for hours, but I'll try not to bore you. Okay, so we're gonna go here, and I'm sharing my screen, and I'm figuring out this. Okay, so Pluto in the 7th house. This is Pluto as this is Pluto in Libra, right? And let me just put this thing up here. I'm Sun, I'll go back to the 7th house. There we go. That's me. And it's everyone born in 70s, you know, till to 82, 83, when Pluto entered into Scorpio. And it is interesting. We've just gone through the Pluto square, and wow, it is definitely totally opposite experience than having Pluto in the first house. And it's again a cardinal house. And as I said, you know, from Pluto in Virgo, this process of refining yourself and refining the ego so that there is a possibility to cooperate with people around you. This is exactly what the 7th house is all about. So there's a new cycle of relationships. And I've given the Pluto in Libra generation quite a bit of thought since I'm born there myself. And, you know, my generation, we were the first generation who came out of a lot of, then the dysfunctions of relationships were starting to show for real. Our parents' relationships and the Pluto in Libra generations, they are more or less hobby psychologists, all of them, because they have this on the inner levels, they have a lot of experience um, with being in different kinds of relationships. And it can be these magnificent relationships from the past that is also fueling an immense romanticism. And it is relationship wounds, rejections and losses and cheating and, Pluto Venus archetype. It can be very intense. Um, these deep patterns of relationship challenges that Pluto in the seventh house people go through is often related to their inability to stay at their own values, stay with their own values, stay at their core. And because of this experimentation, trying out different paths, trying out different lifestyles, diets, clothing, relationship. I go from that kind of person to the other kind of person, this kind of polarity experience where you've gone from one extreme to the other. So there can be a lot of experimentation, and that's part of often can lead to a certain ego weakness. And when there's an ego weakness, there can be a tendency to compare your life to others. And suffering begins with comparison, right? So when you start comparing yourself to others, there's not much happiness coming out of that. And, like, I wish my husband were like her husband, like that kind of comparison. And that's when you can get a lot of loyalty in relationships, a lot of serial monogamists. That's what they call the Pluto in Libra generation. They're like, oh no, I'm bored with you, ciao ciao. Like it's even more intense for those who are born with Uranus in Libra as well. But it is these growing out of relationships, growing out of we're trying to get a new energy in relationships. We want to have a new way of being in relationships. So this this change is often causing a lot of challenges. You want to do everything right, you commit to someone, and then you realize you grow apart, etc. So it's a cardinal energy, and it's changing all the time, and that can be very destabilizing, of course, and that can lead to some relationship wounds. There can also be a fear of conflict, and wherever we have like a very strong Venusian energy, there is this feeling that this, I don't want to hurt anyone, and I don't want to create conflict, because conflict equals separation. I don't want to be abandoned again. I need to, I don't want to create instability. And there can also be this problem of committing to anything, not just a relationship, to friendships, to life, to work, to, being dedicated enough to see things to the end. And if you don't know who you are, that's going to be very difficult, right? Because then you come halfway to your goal, and then you realize that this is not what I wanted. So you turn and you do like a U-turn, and you come back and you change everything again. So the Aries polarity point is all about individuality, to knowing yourself so well that you have a clear point of focus. So there's this flip-flop with the seventh and the first house axis, or the Aries and the Libra polarity, between being incredibly involved with people and then withdrawing into yourself, and being incredibly involved and coming back and forth from this. But the deep issues in Pluto in the seventh house is actually codependency. And it is learning to cultivate the ability to stand alone, is what the first house polarity point is all about. learning to be more independent in a relationship, learning to be more true to your values, learning to become more balanced in a relationship. I know a person who has this Pluto opposing his sun from Aries to Libra, and he told me just recently, actually, the only person who can set me out of balance is myself. And that was kind of like, yeah, that's true, actually. So how do we do that? How do we get into this drama, this energy of imbalance? Because we allow certain patterns in our life to move us too much. We become too influenced. And I know there's this thing with certain Pluto types. They're more confronting, they're more dedicated. They go into the deep transformational work in with like Pluto in Scorpio, with like, oh, bring it on, I want to see everything. Whereas Pluto in Libra generation can be a little bit more careful, a little bit more conservative about it, because they really want to maintain some sort of harmony in their lives. Harmony is one of the top priorities, and if you have top priority is harmony, you don't want to cause too much disturbance. But the ability to deal with confrontation and to fight for yourself is quite important if you want to have a healthy relationship, or if you want to have people respect your boundaries. I think it is Patricia who mentioned that there's a geisha complex in the Pluto in the 7th house, energy. It's like, I'm here to serve, to be nice to people and love them and make them feel loved, and it's this also a little serving others, but it's not helping the Pluto in the 7th house to have like a clear sense of self. And when you don't have a clear sense of self, you cannot make decisions either. If you're always moving and changing whatever direction the wind goes, you can't make clear decisions. So there can be this deep, deep insecurity of not knowing who you are or what to decide for. And every time something Libra comes into a conflict where they have to choose, they know intuitively, I have to choose between two things. I want both. Can I have both? Yeah, I don't know. Can you? Well, it's going to be messy if you want to have both, and you just have to make a decision. I had that. I wanted to become both a musician and an astrologer, and when I had my child, I had to choose, because there wasn't enough time in the day, in hours in the day, to be both. So I had to make a clear decision, and I had to choose away something that is sometimes, it was a good choice, but sometimes I'm thinking, God, I missed that, So choosing something is actually choosing something else away, And that's probably the biggest thing with Pluto and Libra, is that, but you have this argumentation all the time, but this is making me feel so good, and this person he's so nice, and it's so good for me. So you can have people who end up in relationship patterns where there's a lot of abuse, actually, like there's a lot of dysfunctions, and then there will be some sort of rejection eventually, so that there can be a process around having an ego and realizing that you didn't actually want this, so you created the separation. Aries is separation. So, first house is individuality, 7th house is union. So you get a huge flip-flop between union and separation in these people's lives. The 8th house. Well, Pluto's home. I remember we went to this EA conference in Black Hills in a long time ago. It was like 2006, I think I was there. And I, due to the porphyry system, I got Pluto in the 8th house. If I use Koch, I get it in the 9th house. So I was like super convinced that I was a Pluto in the 9th house person. But then I got this Pluto in the 8th house on my badge. And I was like, oh, you're Pluto in the 8th house. People come up and like, oh, you're Pluto in the 8th house. That was funny. But I, it's directly on the cusp. So I don't know how to interpret my own Pluto placement, because it changes according to what house system I use. But definitely, I recognize a lot of these themes of the 8th house. It's the life and death experience. It's the all or nothing. kind of experience is that I need to grow. And I need to move beyond my limitations. I need to find liberation. I need to purify my emotional body. And I need to become stronger. And what you have there, is the potential for deep dependency. There is this principle in Scorpio or in the 8th house that deals with osmosis. And the hunt is for power. The hunt is to become more powerful. I need to feel powerful because I come from powerlessness, and I need to feel more power. I need to overcome the wounding of rejection that lies deep inside my soul so that I can create again, so that I can be again. And with Pluto in the 8th house, the soul is carrying massive memories of traumas, of abuse. What is abuse? I'm very, very generous with the term. I'm not referring to physical abuse necessarily, but abuse is being taken advantage of. But if you let yourself be taken advantage of, you are also in for it. You also want something out of it. You gain something. And it's all these, what do you gain? Well, maybe you get some energy from that person that's rejecting you, or you get some, you think you get some power out of the job you're holding on to, for instance, but it's really kind of fake power. It's just a substitute. And eventually, due to the polarity point flip-flop of the whole Pluto psychology, there will be something that pushes you towards the 2nd house and you're learning self-sufficiency. And you're learning to be alone again. And there was something, there was this beautiful the client I had the other day, and she said, when I get rejected, I become obsessive. We become fixated by the object that rejects us. And it's almost like a dog that is sensing that there's a person in this room that doesn't like dogs or afraid of dogs. And of course, it makes the dog very insecure. So the dog goes over to that person that is energetically just saying to this dog, go away, don't come here, don't come here. And the dog is feeling this rejection. Why don't you love me? The dog says. It's really like insecure. And when it becomes insecure, it also becomes super defensive, and then it's ready to attack anytime. This is a deep, deep psychology of the 8th house. It's this, what does lust do to us? How does it tweak our sense of power? I mean, how does it distort our sense of self? And it really is a little bit like this, like the object that's what's been denied for you, you want it back. And that's when we can end up in power games. So there's a lot of shadow material to work with the 8th house Pluto, for sure. There's this constant hunger also that can be present in Pluto in Scorpio. I want more. This is not good enough. I want more, and there can be all these sexual issues as well. And there's also abandonment issues from the past. Like somebody left you once, you're going to be left forever, right? So the key to solving these traumatic experiences that the soul has gone through is to find peace again. And the healing of the 2nd house is to be able to, this is Patricia's way of explaining it, and I think it's so beautiful. She used the metaphor of somebody who's been out in a battle, right? Like a real war, a soldier coming home battered and bloody and abandoned and lost all his friend, and seeing all this painful war, and just lying in the grass again, looking at the sun, like this simple living of just being, which is Taurus speciality. The high side of Taurus is just simply enjoying life. And you cannot do that if there's too much emotional noise. But there is this feeling that, just the green grass, green is the color of the heart. It is gaining harmony again through merging with peace itself, because nature is peaceful. It doesn't keep, it does, you know, like, or you can have a cat, for instance, and this cat will always love you. It's not like the conditional love of humans. So eventually, when that healing has been, you know, experienced a little bit, there is this satisfaction, you know, like, okay, I don't have everything, but I'm satisfied. It doesn't have to be like this or that in order for me to feel safe. And and you can learn to trust again, even though life proved differently earlier. Like, yes, because of codependency, I got into these really nasty patterns and power games and abandonment. But since I do not no longer, since now I'm self-sufficient, I can trust again. I know I will survive, even though this relationship might not survive. I know I'm good on the other side. I know there's peace for me because I am peace. I found peace in myself. I know how to install peace in myself. I know how to treat myself. So then you let go of fixations. I need this in order to be happy, you know. So yeah, Taurus is the sign of the Buddha. And the Buddha is the cave. So it's retreating into the cave of your it's the nothingness. And you lay still in the green grass and you're looking at the stars and you're just, you're in nothingness. And that's so healing. So with the 8th house, 2nd house, South Node, Pluto in the 8th house, Pluto polarity point, it's going to lead you into the art of learning how to satisfy yourself. The art of learning how to be self-sufficient, the art of learning healing. There's a need for healing. So, Pluto in the 9th house. Yeah, this is interesting placement. You know, Pluto is the 9th house. It's the Pluto in Sagittarius generation. My children are both there. I'm Pluto in the 9th house. So I spent a little time figuring that one out as well. Yeah. And I guess that's the astrologer in me. You know, I came very early into the art of astrology, and people call me very truthful. You know, for a Pluto in Libra person to, you know, it would be much worse if I had Pluto in Scorpio, I'm sure. I'd just say everything, everywhere. Thank God I have a little bit of diplomacy left. You know, like there's a little bit of diplomacy because there can be quite a bit of fundamentalism in this, you know, like judgmentalism. I'm judgmenting, you know, like, I'm judging people. And that's, judgment stands in the way of truth. But there can be this deep, deep need for religion or for faith. You know, I have to believe in something. We have a Jupiter Pluto square this year. It still isn't over. And it is this development of faith. You know, how do you have faith in yourself? How do you believe in yourself? It's very important to believe in something in order to do something. You know, without faith, which is sort of like the fiery engine of action, you have an idea and there's no body of energy to support the idea into fruition. There is no faith to get courage so that you can make risks. And this deep, deep need for faith can lead Pluto in the 9th house people into all kinds of stuff that they need to believe in order to make things happen. Which is, you know, that can be a limitation sometimes, yeah? And I have to consult with my I Ching master every time I want to do something because I believe in that, right? But there's also this, you know, with Pluto in the 9th house people, there's also this, you know, fabulous need for having complete freedom of thought and learn, you know, this, inability to listen to others. It's huge with Sagittarius. So it's these loners and nomads that leads to a certain kind of alienation. You know, I know you probably speak something truthful, but I don't understand this astrology thing language. And, you know, many Pluto in the ninth house people experience that they talk a, you know, they talk a language nobody else understands. And that is fine if you're in a monastery, right? Because then your fellow brothers and sisters will be very versed in the same language. But when it comes to getting out into the world again, it's not so good. I compare Pluto in the ninth house with Tibet. Tibet was a closed environment. There were a lot of secret knowledge in this particular region of Earth. And with the invasion of China in the 50s, this knowledge was spread around the world. And that's the ninth house, third house thing. Like suddenly we got access to a lot of stuff that was hidden before, only for the monasteries in Tibet. And, you know, the ninth house is this big pilgrimage in life. We go, I think life, you know, for me, life is a pilgrimage. That's why I'm sure I have Pluto in the ninth house. I'm walking a path, and I've always walked a path, and I'm, you know, it's nothing, I just can't see life as different. You know, I believe the pilgrimage is the most important thing for a human being, to come home to your spiritual self. So this kind of lifestyle can be a little alienating to Earth, because if you see most people, you know, we just we go to sleep and then we get up in the morning and we use energy, and then we go to sleep and we wake up in the morning. So I don't think it seems that what drives people more than meaning is money. Yeah. Money is the driving force of nature on Earth today. And for Pluto in the ninth house, it's meaning. It has to be meaningful. It has to make sense. Why else would I do it? So, what is the polarity point? You know, there's nothing wrong with wanting meaning, but it is that, you know, you can find meaning everywhere. And it's learning to see the relativity of everything and not become dogmatic. Like, I only think people who are versed in astrology are interesting. Yeah, I understand this of course. It's always nice to be home and speak your own language, but we're meant to spread our energies and create our energies and share the knowledge in a way that people understand. There's no point talking, you know, I can talk to the, how do you call that? You talk to the choir, or you talk to the, you know, like, um, we have that in Norwegian, I forgot what it was. But when you talk to your own congregation, they will always nod. Yes, we agree, we agree. And then you come and you talk to scientists about astrology, and they say, wow, you are so deep into the pseudo scientific shit. Like, God, you're ridiculous. So it's learning to adapt to the environment and not always, it's not always expect that people understand what you're saying. And it's that refinement that is the third house polarity point. It's being able to see that people are thinking differently than you, and they might also have some truth available for you. You might learn something. It's learning how to take the high frequencies of certain kinds of spiritual knowledge and just gently simplify it and put it down on earth, so that people understand your knowledge. They understand your wisdom. It's not just, it's understandable. It relates into their lives in a way that it's not cheap. Like, there's a lot of cheap quotes going on today with this spiritual meme thing. Life is bliss, for instance. I mean, it doesn't make sense for a lot of people to read that, but it can make deep sense for somebody who are on that path. So through the third house, it's an excellent placement for an astrologer because you study the diversity in life. You study the numerous expressions in life. Like, that's interesting. Like, it's just really, really interesting. So that can be difficult, right? To find these words, especially if you've been like a priest for 100 million years, or like in a monastery for quite a while. Maybe contemplation was more important in a monastery than expression. So you're more contemplative and you're like meditating, or you're in your energy all the time, and you can't, there's no voice to communicate. So you have to find a voice, right? And you have to be able to relate to different people, no matter where you are. All right, 10th house, the last cardinal sign, huh? Capricorn, where Pluto is for the time being, which is very interesting. We have a whole generation being born right now who has Pluto in Capricorn. And these are old souls, huh? Everything related to Capricorn is a little old. You get this. Capricorn is a very interesting sign. It's a very misunderstood sign. I know there's this discrimination between the signs, and some of them get good rep and other get bad rep, and it's like we prefer some over others. Like, I think they studied that, like how many times do people talk shit about Scorpio? A lot of times, like it's and how do we appraise others? So, but Capricorn is a little like, sometimes it's described as a very dull sign, and it's really not a dull sign. It's a fabulous sign. It's the sign of initiation in esoteric astrology. It's the sign of the path. And in Sagittarius, you find the path. In Capricorn, you walk it. You don't talk about it. You walk the path. So it's growing up. It's a true awakening. It's like, was that a responsible thing to do? I'm not sure. Was it? I have to check. But there are, of course, the shadow sides of Capricorn, and we're all seeing this now, all these collective traumas that are still affecting our capacity to live healthy lives. You have the trauma of failure from past lives, like I tried so hard, but I still failed. And it's this massive ambition that comes in this life then to make right what was done wrong. And that's also guilt, to not be able to live up to the expectations, to not be able to not feel adequate enough. And these Holocaust traumas, like these collective traumas, right? You've been in a situation where you had a collective trauma happening in your life. You can feel personally responsible for it, even though you didn't do anything particular to experience this. Capricorn can also have this status hang up, like I have to be taken seriously, you respect authority. And when you get Pluto Saturn in a chart, you often see these incredibly interesting dynamics of authority conflicts or authority issues. Like, I want you to give me advice, but when you give me advice, I'm not going to listen because I don't trust your authority. So this can be mistrust towards authority. It's really difficult. When I see a very strong Pluto-Saturn energy in a chart and I'm doing a reading, I'm thinking, we have to be smart now. How do we get around that one? Because that's like a huge defensive mechanism because of this authority problem. That person is probably not going to respect my astrological authority. I have to be smarter. I have to see beyond. There is a defensiveness in every Pluto placement. Like the defensiveness of Jupiter Pluto could be like, don't challenge my religion. Huh? So we are defending what we are protecting what we think we need. And with Pluto Saturn, it's that fear of being duped again, a fear of being abused or dominated. And Saturn, Pluto people, they really come into this life learning about authority again, learning to have a more relaxed relationship to everything related to authority. And that's not pushing too much, right? So if you have people with strong Pluto Saturn who's always constantly push, 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 you have to do this, you have to run up that hill and do that, and 10 push-ups and 400 something else squats, like it's really like, don't be so super, pressure, pressure, pressure. Where's the fire? What are we compensating for? We're compensating for earlier failures. Yeah? And I need to have people love me and respect me again, so that I have to prove to them that I'm worthy, I'm valuable. I live up to the expectations, right? So there's this failure energy that is informing Pluto in the 10th house, and it leads to this overcompensation by pushing too much. And that's when the 4th house kicks in, because the 4th house, when you get in touch with one of these Cancer types, super Cancer people, they're like, they're so sweet, and they can hold space, and they accept you as you are, and they're understanding, and it's really such a healing to get into, like, oh, you don't have to be anything, you can just relax, huh? So it's relaxing again, it's chilling. So you probably with, the challenge with this 4th, 10th house axis is that normally you form relationships that are somehow parental in their energy, like you have to be the parent or you're the kid, or it's alternating. And but if you meet, then if you have Pluto in the 10th house and you meet somebody who's really nurturing, you need to be in this person's energy for a while to learn to relax, relax the neck and the shoulders, and Capricorn is the skin, and it's the skeleton, and it's the structural, foundation of your body. So it's hypertense. We cannot relax. It's like I have to do something valuable and prove myself and do so. I have to walk up that hill, and I have to do it all alone. And no, you need emotional support and nourishment and time. You need time. You need time. You need time to digest, and you need time to just be, and you need time to be here and present in your emotional needs. You need time to listen to your own needs. That's acceptance. Accepting that, okay, in the past, I made a mistake, or I failed, I took on too much. And then I have to accept that in this lifetime, I might not be able to do so much, because I'm walking towards the healing of my emotional body. That's where I'm going. And that's creating a new self-image that is not dependent on outer achievements. I met some really highly developed Capricorn people in my life. God bless. Thank you. And vanity is one of the things. One of them are pretty focused on. He's like, the vanity of ambition, huh? People think they have careers. He's really funny. He's Capricorn, super Capricorn, Neptune in the 10th house, Pluto in Virgo in the 8th house, really intense guy, And he's like, there's so much vanity in career. People have this status thing that they're going through. That's the higher side of Capricorn. That's when you move into the higher realms of this. You see beyond your own vanity. And you shouldn't think that Capricorn is a vain sign, but it is. It's vain in a way that is not necessarily associated with vanity, because we think vanity has to do with beauty, and it has to do with appearance. How do you appear to people? I'm Dr. This and that. Hi. Then you appear more serious, and people will probably respect you more. But if you came in and you say, hi, I'm evolutionary astrologer / healer, you might be ridiculed. And I think that's painful for both Virgo and Capricorn. Oh, they hate to be, naked. It's like, you can see me now. Oh, sometimes I see this with Pluto and Virgo. It's like, now they will see how many, how little perfect I am. But at least, you know, the big win for Pluto in the 10th house is being able to create a self-image that is not based on outer achievements. It comes with Pluto-Saturn aspects. It comes with Pluto in the 10th house, Saturn in the 12th, no, Saturn in the 8th, sorry. So, and not pushing so much, huh? Relax. Now, Pluto in the 11th house, this has often been a puzzling placement for me. I'm like, what is that? It's group oriented. There is so many things with the Aquarian archetype. It's about groups, belonging, it's group work, it's kinship, it's friendship, it's all these kinds of associations you make in your own life, the connections you make, that and the knowledge that together we are stronger. When we create something together, when we work in groups, we achieve much more than if we only used our own two hands. So it's, you know, we live, how do we achieve group work? Well, it starts, actually, the trine of air is related to the progress of group work. It starts with Gemini, learning the relativity of everything, learning the languages of the many. And then it goes on to Libra, learning how to cooperate one-on-one. And then coming out into Aquarius, learning how to cooperate with the world. But there is this dark side of Uranus, or the dysfunctional side, and it is all these experiences that the soul made that has to do with alienation and rootlessness, to be out of society, to be the outsider. In Scandinavia, we have this author from Denmark who wrote this beautiful poetic story for children, actually, The Matchstick Girl. And it is about a very, very poor girl who's standing outside Christmas Eve looking into the windows of people, a family who's eating this beautiful dinner. I think it's turkey, and everything is like, so deliciously described. And she's out there trying to sell matches for her mother because they're so poor. And she's so cold. And she just wants to lay down. She's so tired too. She just wants to lay down in the snow for a little while. And she's looking at the star, and suddenly she's seeing her grandmother, and she's dying. And she dies. And it's like, oh, that's a nice children's story to read before I go to sleep. It's like crazy. But it's the story of Aquarius and the alienation, the outsider syndrome. It's that trauma of being left on the outside, of being held on the outside, of being frozen out, of having group experiences that were bullying and teasing and silent treatments and not feeling good enough. Or the other side around elitism, what we see with Uranus. We can use the famous Mr. Trump as an example, because he's born with Sun Uranus conjunction on the nodal axis. Actually, he's born under an eclipse. And he has Sun Uranus, and it's the elite. But remember, with Trump, I don't know, I saw a documentary on his life story once, and it sort of explains his chart. It's such an amazing, interesting graphic story to see his life story and compare it to his astrological chart. It's very educational. And you get to see this backside of Uranus, because his father was very rich, but they weren't considered refined enough. So they never got into the real deep elite. Uranus wants to be with elite people. I want people of progress. I want people who makes me go somewhere. It's a little bit like the 8th house, actually. I want people who moves me and creates something in me so that I can expand. Now, the elite is like this group within societies, and it's the rich ones, or it's the royals, and you will find a lot of Uranus, strong Uranus signatures in the charts of royals, for instance, and royalty. And it's the flip side of Leo, right? But Leo is, It's a more spontaneous, warm king, you know. The Uranus elite. We have royals in this country, and every 17th of May, which is our national day, they go up onto the balcony and they wave a little artificially like this, and they are all very pretty with their pastel colors and fancy hats, and they wave down to the people. The people are on oh, and it's this distance, you know. So anything related to Uranus can be related to distance. I'm cold, I'm distant, I'm traumatized, I'm frozen. So there's a need to thaw up. When a Leo is warmth, I'm thawing here, like I can feel my ice is melting and I'm becoming alive again. I'm becoming alive again. And I think that's what Princess Diana went through when she divorced Charles. She has the moon in Aquarius, Cancer with the moon in Aquarius. And her moon in Aquarius describes this old Uranus energy, Aquarius energy. And you have that in the US charts as well. You have moon in Aquarius. And what was the whole project of the US? Well, it was moving away from the elite. We don't want these royals in Europe to take all our tax money. That's not fair. So they wanted equality for everyone. This is the principle of Aquarius, yeah? But then again, what happened? Well, they created a new kind of elite. Now you have like the rich and the poor. It's still this elite thing. Everybody wants to be in the elite, but you can only be in the elite if you have something to offer. So it's not this Pisces, we are all one. We don't care if you don't have a job or if you don't have any money. We can share the cake. No. Nothing. Uranus is like, you're not good enough to be in our group. So the coldness of society can often be an experience that Pluto in the 11th house people go through, or they grow up in this family environment where there's, this cold family environment where you have a very critical patriarch who is always criticizing the pittiness of spontaneous people, like, how can they do this? Are they not civilized? Huh? So it's that trauma of constantly being reminded that you need to be self-conscious about yourself, right? And that is kind of like, that can fragmentate something in you. When you have a strong Uranus energy, like Pluto in the 11th house, or many kinds of Uranus signatures, you can have this split energy going on. Like, I have my I feel nothing from my neck and down. And my center is here. I'm always rational. I'm never spontaneous. I never go out of my control, because I understand group needs so much. I have to make sure that my personal ego is not interfering with the group needs. So you behave. And it's the etiquette of the elite. It's funny how many rules they have, these royals. You have to put the fork there and that fork there and that fork there. And it's like, and then you have to eat very behaved and very stupid, but etiquette. So there can be this experience of having grown up somewhere where the standard was super high. Like, you have to behave in this family, otherwise it's out. And then there's the outsider. When I see a very strong Uranus on the south node, Pluto in the 11th house, Pluto-Uranus conjunction, as a lot of you probably have, there's this trauma of being tossed out of the good company. We don't want you no more. Now you broke the rules, the etiquette. And imagine how many times we broke the etiquette. Well, I fell in love with the guy from that place. Are you kidding? You're out. Yeah. Or what, you're reading the stars now? We're all Christian. Go. Yeah. So it can be this, being tossed out of your own family, or having an experience of being rejected and not allowed into the circle. And that's when you have to do one thing. You do what fifth house people do. You take care of your own destiny. So I'll create my own life then. And then you're the center of your own life. And then you manifest. And then you open your heart, because that's life. You're fed up being cold. You don't want to be cold anymore. And you want to openly love everyone. You just want to love and feel love and be love. And then you can also have a little bit of joy and spontaneous dancing in the streets. I don't care what people think. I can be seen as an outsider and I can experience myself as an outsider. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm one. Yeah. So you get to a point where you realize it's okay to be different. No problem. And today it's easier to be Aquarian, true Aquarian Leo than it was 50 years ago. The social norms of yesterday's, they were just unbearable for most people. Did you hear what she, wore for that party? Yeah, people are, they love, the gossiping. And that's what the fifth house person really have. They just have to learn to not care. I'm radiating, so I don't care. I'm me. I'm the center of life. And then eventually, what happens is that when you get that kind of self-love and self-respect, society would adore you. They're like, oh, this person has real power, wonderful, real energy coming from real heart. So you're in, and you're not just in, you're the leader. Right? It's a great combination, this one, once it's understood. But sorry, we managed to get Pisces too. Fabulous. Yay, Pisces. I've had a number of clients recently with Pluto in the 12th house, and it's crazy how much protection they need. It's completely unaware of sometimes what danger they're in. Is this good for you? A problem with 12th house and Pisces energy is normalization. Well, I've had this every day of my life, so I'm not really reacting to the abuse in this situation. And, you have to teach them how to be healthy again, because that's not healthy. It's not healthy to be in this kind of relationship. And you're still seeing only the good in this person while I'm in love with the potential. So it can be, being lost in the great unconscious, being naive, having weak boundaries. It can be, sometimes there's this incredible confrontation with evil, experience with evil, and there can be paralysis and deep, deep addictions. There's also, psychic talents. I'm so sensitive, I see everything. But that sometimes leads to disorientation. And that's, the disorientation of the 12th house. It's like everything is just relative. Everything means everything. So there is no art of discrimination. In Hindu mythology, we have this concept called viveka, and it means true understanding. And that's really something this Pluto in the 12th house needs. True understanding. What is really going on here? Yes, you are sensitive to psychic energies and you walk around on needles and you're walking on glass. Yeah. Careful, because the environment is, dangerous. There's some darkness in the environment. And the 12th house is it's not a place where we have any control. It is a place where we lose control. So there can be this security in chaos, or security in being lost, security in addictions, in escapism. And there's also this, the 12th house Pisces energy is also related to glamour and dangerous ideals. So you can have people who distort truth and, shoehorn it into their own fitting, or people who simply completely get lost in reality, not connecting the dots. So there's this victim persecution complex available or potential in Pluto in the 12th house. And the victimization sometimes that I've seen people go through with this placement is just, sometimes I think, God, people, why do they have to go through all this pain? I mean, how can people treat other people like this? Really seeing the dark side of humanity, right? Walking down alleys and meeting people who doesn't want you to be happy, and abusing you, or it could be sudden violence, or naivety going wrong. We have such a strong focus on love in the spiritual communities. Like, you have to love everyone. That's dangerous ideals. Sure, love everyone, but don't enable assholes. Huh? There's a viveka going on here. That's true understanding. This guy or this woman would definitely screw you over, so please love him or love her, but stay away. Set boundaries for yourself. Have some boundaries. There's no boundaries in the 12th house. Everything is open, like it's a wide open door. I have the universe inside of me. But since it is a subconscious house, like most of that psychic energy stuff is not something we talk about in our society, there can be this sleepwalking thing, like a little numb. And I think that's, sometimes you see, there was this healing book that I, many years ago that I read. I love her, Barbara Ann Brennan. And she has this book called Light Emerging. And in Light Emerging, I think she has two books, but that in Light Emerging, she describes the general survival mechanisms energetically. Like, and for a 12th house person, that's my theory, that's my conclusion, then that has to describe the way that the 12th house person reacts to pressures in life. And she was like, they had drawn a little figure, the person standing and looking out to the side, like looking up and away, and the aura was going out instead of being aligned, and I'm here, I'm present, I'm direct, I'm seeing this shit, am I not, huh? The tendency for the 12th house energy is to just move away and have like a little place on the outside of the body where they can safely hang. There's nobody can get to me here, right? It's my little safe house. So the aura is, you can have this dislocation of the neck, for instance, or like people who are unable to, always dreaming a little bit, right? So, but it's the aura, it's very difficult to get it back on place again. You need some yoga to do that, but because it's pulled out that direction or the other direction, and you can see it a little bit with the flickering of the eyes, etc. And this is an interesting, way to understand the energy of the 12th house and Pluto in the 12th house, because if there's been a lot of abuse and there's been a lot of danger, and like in the 12th house, we're just caught up in things. Imagine you being a child and you live with abusive parents. You can't just move out if you're 4 years old. I mean, you have to be there. So there's always this neglect aspect that goes on in the 12th house. And with Pluto in the 12th house, these neglect issues can be huge. Like, I had no power to just get up and go. I was 4. So the only place I could go was out there. I could only move into my imagination. And it's dangerous to be left alone in the realm of the imagination. The astral is not a place we want to live, because then there's distortion of reality going on. Like, you have your own explanations for everything. Like, but he's a nice guy, it was an accident, huh? So we keep normalizing shit because that's what we're used to. It's our survival mechanism. Eventually that will pass, Eventually people with Pluto in the 12th house will say, everything is meaningless. It's just empty. It just feels completely empty. I'm lost in space. I don't have connection to Earth. I don't exist. So it's really the trauma of non-being. And when the 6th house kick in, it's like, hey, wake up. You need to get into rhythm again. You need to rhythmically organize your life. Rhythm is everything. 8 hours sleep, 8 hours work, 8 hours fun. That's how it should be. 24 hours a day. Rhythm, 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 rhythm. And yeah, but I prefer my freedom. That's what the 12th house person would say. I don't like Tuesdays. I don't like demands. I don't like pressures. Oh, well, then you're going to end up dysfunctional, aren't you? So it's healthy, stable routines and getting into life again and being discriminative and having a healthy sense of self that can say, hey, people can't use me like that. That's not, who do you think you are? You can come here and just dump and then go again. So it's taking steps, and realizing it, healing, that's steps. It doesn't come immediately. It's just small steps. So not giving up, right? There's a need for the Pluto in the 12th house person to have it so easy all the time. Oh, but it's supposed to be easy. Yeah, maybe you have to learn not to quit. Wake up. So it's waking up from this deep, deep sleep of nothingness, of this deep retreat that the soul took because that was the only place the soul could survive. It's an interesting placement, and the need to develop an immune system is very, very much a part of the 6th house polarity point. And for me, an immune system seen from an energetic point of view, it's not necessarily the white and the red, the blood cells and everything. It's not necessarily that. For me, immunity is having a healthy sense of self. So you know what to say no to and what to say yes to. So you don't need to be infected in the first place. And then the blood starts to work, right? If you drink too much because everybody around you drink a lot and you end up with an ulcer, that's a dysfunction of the 6th and the 12th house. So there could be diseases triggering this need to get to the 6th house again. And you have to clean up the life and make it work again. So, yes, that was the 12 houses. And I don't know what time it is, but...
Okay, Sol, we will have to wind down in a minute or two. Yes. So thank you so much. Did you want to show any other slides before we go?
No, that's
okay. If you could please click on stop share at the top of the screen, the red section.
Oh, no, I'm trying to figure out this thing. I don't know where there it was. I found it.
Okay, well, any final comments that you'd like to make?
Yes. No. Well, it's going to be interesting. I wish you all a wonderful eclipse, I think, and it's going to be an amazing experience if you're open for the change. But I've seen the transits, and I know most people, for the time being, we could certainly use a little vacation from all the seriousness. And I think I will just inspire you to have some fun. Go out, have some fun, dance a little bit. I mean, it's worth it. You only live now. And that's what perhaps is the hidden meaning in all these catastrophes that we are always surrounding ourselves with. So please enjoy yourself.
Okay, thank you. Would you all please thank Sol Jonassen?
Thank you, Sol. Great to see you.
That was amazing. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Sol.
everyone.